This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon.
When I was a kid, I remember when Mother's Day and Father's Day would come around, I would ask my dad, when is Kids Day? And as my dad explained, Kids Day is every day. The whole world is tilted toward you as a kid in ways you can't recognize when you're young. It's in that vein that I'd like to talk about the topic of today's podcast. And so if you happen to listen to this on March 8th, happy Women's Day. And if you happen to listen anytime during the month of March, happy Women's History Month. And if you're listening right now, that means you know me. You know who I am, you know how I am, and you know what I'm about. You probably know what I'm about to say next. What's wrong with this picture? When they told you that March was your month for history, but also that March 8th was your day, didn't that feel wrong? Didn't it feel like a little too much, like they were slathering it on a little too thick? Like when a guy gets your number and texts you right away? Or when you first start dating someone and they love bomb you right away? When those actions happen, your equal and opposite reaction is for your spider senses to tingle. You feel that something's off. You feel that things are moving too fast. You feel that what's being said can't be genuine. You'd feel those things immediately and you'd run away, not walk. You'd run away and you'd be right to. By now you know that when you are love bombed, it's not actually about you. It's not about you at all. It's that person trying to get things from you using a crude form of flattery. You know to feel suspicious immediately when it happens. But when they tell you that March is your month and that March 8th is also your day, you said, yes, queen. You said you deserve it, that women deserve this and any other applause that may result. And it's that instinct, that need to be applauded, that's made you a target. Your need to be pandered to can and will be used against you. It's easy to see when it's some goofball in the dating game. But can you recognize it when it comes from your friends and family who are offering you the poison of terminal uniqueness? Did you ever imagine that American women would clear their first century, 100 years of suffrage without getting a woman president? No suffragette would have ever imagined such a thing, and yet here we are. And it's not because men are mean, it's because women have been steered off course. I'll save you some time on this one and begin at the end. My thesis is simple. My thesis is this, and it applies to men as much as it does women. Radical feminism was done to you, not for you. What you think and what appears on first glance and by its rhetoric to be a movement about empowerment, I am woman, hear me roar, anything you can do, I can do better, is just the opposite. The revolution was never going to empower you. It was only going to make you mad enough to vote every 4 years. By now, it would be embarrassing to think that it exists for any other reason. It'd be embarrassing to think otherwise. When you traded the feminine for being a feminist, you made a deal with the devil. You traded in the gift and the specialness that God gave you for the perpetual outrage machine that Gloria Steinem talked you into. You made the same mistake Eve made in Genesis 3. What I don't get is why you thought this was going to go well. I could have saved you 60 years, and I would have if I wasn't just 40. I can't make up for lost time, but I can save you the next 60 years. I can tell you that you are free. The prison door is locked from the inside. You can stop drinking this poison anytime you want. Look, it's just me and you today, and I hope that in our time together, you can see some things differently. You can see that feminism was done to you, not for you. You can see that feminism has made you weak and embittered and full with grievance and not empowered. You can see that feminism is a bill of goods and you should ask for a return. Pop quiz. What's the biggest political issue to American women, regardless of race, age, or even politics? It's not a trick question. The answer is exactly what you think it might be. It's abortion. Now, Let's think about what that means. From the time a little girl is a baby, she might carry around a baby doll. It's a funny thing about little kids, they get super protective over anything even slightly smaller than themselves. When a girl carries a baby doll, she's carrying a tiny version of herself, a mini-me, just like mom does. We have a phrase in my community that what they see is what they'll be. And so the baby doll is that first model of motherly love, the part of your heart that beats outside of your body. That's the right way to view a human life, especially your own offspring. And that's what the baby doll teaches. So what happens then that within 20 years, the same little girl who loved her baby doll has been turned into a pink-haired protester? Allegedly, she's there for reproductive rights, but in truth, she has shown up to shout her abortion. It wasn't always this way. In 1992, the first presidential election I remember, I was 8. 20 years after Roe versus Wade, Bill Clinton, a Democrat, won the presidency by saying abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. What he was saying was some amount of women will always need and seek abortions for whatever reason, and God bless them because they will need it. And when she does get the abortion, it should be legal. But this should not be celebrated, and it should not happen in big amounts. So how do you get from safe, legal, and rare to shouting your abortion in just 30 years? Because it's not us they're shouting at. It's not us they're trying to convince when they shout. After all, we're men. Who cares what we think? Women claim they don't even dress up for men when they look nice. So why then would they meet men in the public square to shout their abortions at them? Because it's not us they're shouting at. It's not men. It's not society. It's not even dad. It's themselves. Those shouts are an attempt to dull the pain. Those shouts are an attempt to override the cries coming from within your soul. Another example of this, the phrase, see something, say something. If intervening in violent acts was our natural wiring, we wouldn't hardly need a slogan. The slogan is furnished to help you override that instinct, to drown out the voice inside that says, why bother? Look, we all have struggles in life. Men struggle with the curse of Adam, and I'll talk about this in detail on a podcast at some future point, I promise. The curse of Adam is when you try to go along and get along. When Eve ate the forbidden fruit in Genesis 3, Adam was right there with her, and he didn't say a word. Remember, Adam was the one who was given God's word directly. You can eat from any tree in the garden except this one, and if you do, you will surely die. Eve only heard it secondhand from Adam. And so when Eve ate the fruit and Adam didn't stop her, he sent the wrong message. He might have given the impression that this was an allowed and even endorsed activity. And when he joined her in eating the fruit, what else could she think? But let's talk about how the fruit got in Eve's hand in the first place. Genesis 3, 4 and 5 reports on Satan's sales pitch to Eve. She'd been told that if she ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, she would surely die. Satan tells her it's not that way. Seeing as these are the last words Eve heard before eating the fruit, they must have had an impact on her. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman, and the serpent we know is Satan. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Think about that last sentence, especially the second to last clause. For you will be like God. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. That right there is the curse of Eve. You will be like God. And when you see that the want to be God and to play God is what drives feminism, you'll never be able to unsee it. Women are 51% of the human beings on this planet, but in the year of our Lord 2025, they continue to act like a minority group. They're a trans minority. They identify as a minority, because everyone in our culture believes there's more to be derived from being a victim than in being a victor and actually overcoming the struggles we all face, all 8 billion of us face. You know how they say March in Michigan comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb? That's what feminism has done to women. At first glance, at first shout, it's numbers too big to ignore. Fear me, you will hear me. But when presented with pushback, there's a retreat to victim status. Think about State Rep Lori Pohutsky. She seeks out headlines for sterilizing herself, claiming she did this in fear of Donald Trump. That's the empowered woman. Hear her roar. Numbers too big to ignore. Watch her play God and salt her own womb for a news headline. How empowering. But when Pohutsky didn't get the attention she wanted, and people offered her prayers rather than praise, now she was a victim. A damsel in distress. A victim of weird men who demand too much for her. Lori, where'd all that empowerment go? Are you all powerful as you claim, or do you need the fainting couch? Last guy who had both was Tony Soprano. You saw how that turned out. Abortion, if you think about it, abortion is the ultimate manifestation of playing God. Women have been turning over their offspring, their children, to evil spirits from the earliest stories we have in humanity. You know how your mom used to say when you were growing up, I brought you into this world and I can take you out? Anyone? No? Just me? Anyway, that's what Casey Anthony did to her child. She brought Kaylee into this world and then she took her out so she could go party. And that's how stupid man, woman, mankind gets when we try to play God. That's how far low we shoot. The only thing we can come up with when we play God is let's find a way to kill our own seed. Transgenderism, it takes things a step further. It's not just playing God. It is a hostility toward God. It's the belief that you can override God. And it kills off our own humanity in the process. If your kid has ever come home talking about the sex they were assigned at birth, as a parent, that should be your red flag. There's only one place they learn to talk like that, and it's from an adult who's grooming them in queer theory. Sometime about a decade ago, maybe it was right after gay marriage became the law in America and gay became the new black, I noticed a trend. Women in their 30s and 40s, even married women, even with kids, had taken to calling themselves queer. This is especially true of white women. Do they date with women? Do they have sex with women? Not necessarily. Maybe they did once upon a time. Maybe they attended a few too many Lilith fairs. Maybe they went to college at Oberlin. But today they live in the same exact suburban home they claim to hate, raising kids they did not abort, and married to a man they love and don't hate. Yet when they face the world and preach philosophies, they preach aloneness and separation and division to others, especially to the black women who might be listening. That's the curse of Eve. It's suffered by every woman who shouts her abortion. And that's why she's shouting. To drown out the guilt. That guilt that's the common thread back to our humanity and ultimately back to God. As the great Hank Moody said, I love women. I have all their albums. And it's in the spirit of love that I'm saying all this. I'm not calling you guys out. What did I just talk about? The curse of Eve. It predates any form of feminism, communism, any of that known to man. These are basic human struggles. The mistake we make in 2025 is we think we're somehow more advanced than our ancient forefathers. We go looking for signs of revelation. Well, here's a reality check to my Bible believers out there. We're not living in Revelation. You can stop looking for signs of the end times. We're still in the garden, or at least right outside of it, and we're still struggling with the same stuff Adam and Eve did. As a people, we're in Genesis, not Revelation. We got kicked out of the garden for playing God, and ever since we've had two choices. Keep on playing God and walking down the devil's path, Down that path, you embrace your narcissism. Down that path, you embrace your vanity. Down that path, you embrace a victim status and walk around talking about what you deserve. When you are led by gods of stone and wood, these attitudes make perfect sense. Or we could do what Abel tried to do, and so many prophets after him, and billions of believers ever since. We could become he who overcomes our human temptations and take our identity instead in the God who made us. Guess what I'm saying is, I'm not calling you out. When I call people out, I talk about them. I'm talking to you now because I'm calling you up. I'm calling you to remember that tiny little girl who carried around an even tinier baby doll everywhere she went. As a child, you thought of that toy as an extension of yourself, as a mini-me. What happened over the next 20 years to make you think mini-me should be exterminated, handed over to Molech instead? What leads you to shout your abortion when that is the choice you do make? What leads you to shout your sterilization and seek headlines like a Lori Pohutsky? These behaviors are not natural to humanity. People have to be trained and I'd even say groomed to think and act that way. Shouting your abortion, seeking headlines for your sterilization, that's all the product of feminist training. And you can thank the idea that the personal is political for a Michigan lawmaker in 2025 tying her tubes using taxpayer money than expecting to be celebrated for it. Her mind has been warped. Lori Pohutsky is living the curse of Eve. She's taken her advice from a serpent. What else would you expect? But I want you to ask, what's going on with you? And where is your head at right now? What makes you say Happy Women's History Month on March 1st and Happy Women's Day on March 8th and not see a problem there and not feel pandered to and not feel that something's wrong? I know you, even if I've never met you. You don't need to be praised for existing as a woman. You love kids, period. Of course you wouldn't want to kill your own kid. Why would you? You don't want to shout your abortion or your sterilization. You're the kind of person who wakes up and thanks God every day for waking you up. You approach the challenges of life not with grievance, but with an open heart and with climbing gear, knowing that this whole thing is a struggle. You don't need feminism to be treated special. You're already special. You're already a child of the King. You are one of one, made uniquely for a time such as this. Even if you are a twin and have an identical twin, that's true. Why did God make both of you? Because we need both of you. Nobody may have told you this before, but I will. You are an image bearer of God, not a member of a demographic group, certainly not a 51% minority. I just thought you should hear that from someone today. You don't need Women's Day. You need to thank God for waking you up on this day so you could put one foot in front of the other and struggle and climb and grow like we all do as humans. Life is long. Do not spend it talking about your grievances and what you deserved. We're all blessed to be here, and we should act that way. So, hey, happy Women's Day. Have fun with it, because this is the last one we're ever going to acknowledge.